So we are here to talk about Wizarducks and the Lost Hat, which is a game that I know that you guys have had in production for quite a while. I've been following the development, obviously, because like I know you, we're buddies. I've been following it like somehow, yeah, right. Since you first talked about it publicly on Twitter, it's kind of where I jumped on board with it. How long have you actually been working on this?
See, that's a surprisingly complicated question because it's been off and on for a really long time. I usually go with like September of 2022.
Oh.
Because that's when like most of the actual code that's actually in the game started getting written. But like that hasn't been like that's been off and on. I've been periodically dealing with other game projects, that sort of thing. And even before that, there were like experimental games, I guess we'll call them, that we were doing before that. Some of the ideas from which ended up in the game that we actually have now, and some of which are still on the list of things to do in the future, maybe.
And what actually sparked the idea to do a game about a duck in a wizard's hat with a staff?
The answer is a lot stupider than you probably are expecting it to be.
You know what? To be honest, knowing you, I expect the answer to be really stupid.
I forget which one of us started it, but there was one conversation years and years ago when my friend and I, who I'm working on this with, were like, we like ducks and we like magic systems. So how about we just smoosh those things together? And then we have a duck who's a wizard.
Well, I think that it works out because it's definitely a cute bit of imagery, and it is definitely something that makes the whole premise of this project unique. So this is an idea that you've had for a long time. This is something that you've had sitting there. What kind of made you go, okay, it's time to turn this into a game?
It's been a long time, so I don't really remember. There have been like, sometimes I work on my own stuff, sometimes I work on games with other people, and I think there was one that I was working on with some other people that didn't end up going anywhere, and I was like kind of annoyed about that. And then my friend said, hey, how about we finally do that like duck thing? And I think that's where it came from. But
solid.
Again, it's been so long that might not act. That's probably like the shortened, cut up version of how it actually ended up getting started. And makes for an all right story, I guess.
Having played the demo, I can tell you that it very much feels like sort of like a Zelda-like game. Was that an inspiration, or did the idea for the actual gameplay style come from somewhere else?
Funny you should say that, because my usual sales pitch for the game is that it's a 2D Zelda with ducks. I played when I was like 6, 7, 8, a lot of the early PC Harry Potter games, which is a lot of the like more direct inspiration, but those were games that I would consider like Legend of Zelda-likes, because they use the same, you have tools to solve problems, you have dungeons, which are usually centered around a spell or some other mechanic, and that kind of thing. I could probably, if I sat down and thought of it, like come up with a list of where the ideas for all of the spells came from. I've been playing a lot of like Golden Sun recently, and I suspect that there are a lot of like memories filed away in the back of my brain from puzzle mechanics that I consciously or unconsciously reached into and drew from for this game. That's certainly where I've been thinking of a lot of in terms of like new puzzle mechanics and that sort of thing.
Now, this game, you guys are developing it in GameMaker, if I'm not mistaken. I have two questions about that. The first one is, I feel like it's kind of maybe has an obvious answer knowing you, but there might be some more thought into it. And that is just simply why GameMaker as opposed to some of the other engines that are out there.
Okay, depending on which angle you're coming at this from, there's two answers. One is because I know how to use it pretty well and I want to like be able to get things done quickly. And if I used any other engine, there would be a lot of like, how do I make it do what I want it to do? Which isn't something I really want to spend a lot of time on. I guess the more sarcastic answer is that like I do know how to use Unity pretty well, and usually when I have to use it for this, that, or the other reason. There's a lot of like, how do I make Unity stop doing the things that it wants to do automatically, which I find so much more annoying.
It's fair. How long have you actually been using GameMaker? I don't know if we've ever talked about this.
The oldest files on my computer that I have that are GameMaker related, I think are from like March of 2011. So that would be 14 years now.
That was that before or after Yo-Yo Games acquired them? I think that's after.
I think after, but not by much.
Yeah.
I think Yo-Yo Games took over in like 2009.
That sounds about right. Because I know that I used GameMaker. I think my first version that I ever used was 5.0, which was pre.
That was like 2004, right?
Yeah, 2003, 2004, something like that. Yeah, but it's been a while. My other question.
I don't know if you have to go through the whole GameMaker genealogy because the naming is kind of confusing. So there was the early era, which was GameMaker 1 through 8, and then after Yo-Yo Games took over, it became GameMaker Studio, and then GameMaker Studio 2, and now they've kind of sort of dropped the ordinal altogether, so it's just GameMaker again.
Yeah, but now there's no space between the two words, and like that whole thing.
Further confusion, because there have also been other products that were unrelated that were named GameMaker in like the 90s that had or didn't have the space.
The other question that I have regarding GameMaker is obviously, as you guys have been working on this, GameMaker as a software suite has had numerous updates over time. Have you guys been upgrading the software along with it? And if so, has that introduced any issues in your project that you've had to work to overcome?
For the most part, yes. It probably in the last like year or so, since it, now that we have versions on Steam that we want to not have break in unexpected ways, I've been doing it less. So I'm going to have to explain this too. So the most recent version of GameMaker is 2024.13. And if you know how many months are in a year, that might raise some questions, which we're not going to get into right now. The game is still on the previous one, 2024.11, because there's really nothing in the most recent version that I need, no features or bug fixes or anything, and I don't want to have to deal with like doing a whole new QA pass on the whole game again, unless I have to. Early on, I was updating pretty much automatically. Even there were a couple of early versions that were like built on beta versions, which is something you really aren't supposed to do. But there were cases where like I needed a bug fixed, or where there was an optimization in the runtime or that kind of thing that I wanted to actually use. But we don't really do as much of that now that we're like, I forget how many, like thousands of lines in, 50,000 lines in or something like that. And there would be actually consequences if something breaks.
Makes sense. And I previously I'd mentioned that you guys do have a demo up on Steam. Obviously that demo came out. It was the end of last year, I believe. And obviously development on the game has continued since the demo came out. How close an approximation is the demo to the current state of the game?
So for the last probably 6 months, we've been mostly working on things like level design or puzzles or that kind of thing. We've periodically we'll go back and just like design sort of the central hub area that we want to create, and that's kind of our like go-to when we need a break and want to do something productive game related. I'm not 100% sure if I would recommend that as a method of game design, but when you have two guys who are being torn in 6 different directions all the time, it's nice to have something like that. I've given up trying to estimate like a percentage how close we are to being done. We have a rough idea of like how much content we want in the game, but I'm sure you do game design. You know how non-linear it can be. Like one day you got a lot done, you create like 30 minutes of gameplay in one sitting, and then another day it's like you don't get anything done for 2 weeks because you're working on like the save load system or something like that. I wish there was a satisfying answer. I know that there are other people who are pretty good at estimating how far along they are, but I try not to make promises because then people expect things to not go sideways at random moments.
So it's safe to say that you guys don't have a rough idea of when you think you'd want the game to be out?
I'd love it if it was done by like the end of the year, but for example, long story short, the last couple of weeks, my friend had to take care of some unexpected family business, so we'll get back to that hopefully as soon as we can.
These things do sadly happen in indie dev quite a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I only have a couple more questions for you, and then we can get you out of here so you can get back to working on it. The first one of those is, with this game, what is your favorite part, both as a player and a dev? Like, is there a piece of art that you particularly like? Is there a gameplay mechanic that you're a big fan of? Some level or area that you really like?
In terms of gameplay, so there's a spell in the game that creates light, and the light allows you to, depending on the context, reveal or sort of like pieces of a puzzle or secret passages or that sort of thing. And that's been a lot of fun to create like levels around, because we're intending to like introduce spells to the player gradually over the course of the game, and this is going to be one of the later ones, so it should allow us to create areas where you can like go back to later in the game and find new things that you can do. I think Metroidvania is an overused word, so I'm going to try and stay away from that word, but it makes me think of that kind of game anyway. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's like not related to gameplay that's been fun to work on.
Big fan of that save load system.
Honestly, yeah, because it was one of the things that, I don't know if it worked on the first try, but it worked on probably like the first 3 or 4 tries, and that was kind of nice.
It's always great in indie dev to have that thing that you like work hard on, that when it finally works, it's like just like that relief of pressure, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's also not like overly complicated. I didn't have to do anything that was like really weird to make, like, if you have a treasure chest, you can just go back to the location later in the game or after you turn the game off, and it'll have its state be preserved. And if you opened a door, it'll have its state be preserved. If you've completed a puzzle, that sort of thing. That was fun to work on. There's also been, for the most part, if there's like a puzzle mechanic, it's like the general idea will usually get working pretty quickly, but making it feel good takes a lot longer.
And my final question that I had for you, you mentioned early on in the interview that you're kind of bouncing between a few projects at the moment. What, if you're ready to talk about anything, what other stuff do you have coming down the pipeline that you're kind of like tinkering away on?
The obvious answer is YouTube stuff, so I guess I would like do the self-promotion thing. I make YouTube videos on how to do stuff in GameMaker, and that's like consumes a good chunk of my time pretty regularly. There's one game which I'm working on with a couple of other people, which I don't think has actually been like announced yet or anything. There's a third which I've been doing off and on for mostly like the last probably 6 to 8 months, but I've helped out. This guy is another guy who's kind of like me. He has other obligations and he just works on it when he has time, which is kind of a classic like top-down RPG.
I'm excited to see what other stuff you got coming down the pipeline. We'll be keeping an eye out for that. So if anybody is interested in Wizarducks, you guys can go over and you can wish list it on Steam. There is a demo up, so you can check out a little snippet of the gameplay. It's pretty fun. I played it when it came out and had a good time with it, so I definitely recommend that other people do as well. In addition to that, people can find DragoniteSpam on YouTube. That's Michael's name on there. Go ahead and check that out. Michael, any final words for the people at home?
I don't know. GameMaker is fun to use. We got a lot of new users. What was it, a year or so ago when Unity self-immolated, and it's been interesting to watch people coming to the engine from other engines and trying to like map the knowledge that they had about other engines onto this one.
But anyways, everybody go ahead and check out Wizarducks. Michael, thank you so much for talking to me. This has been a blast, as usual.